Some major news out of Auburn today as Athletic Director Jake Jacobs has announced that he's going to be resigning on June 1st of 2018, possibly earlier if a replacement is named. James Crepea joins me now to discuss this whole situation. James, I know that obviously this has been something that's been rumored for a few weeks, if not months. There's been several scandals across multiple sports at Auburn. What can you tell us about the situation, and why do you think we're talking about this, why it happened now on a Friday afternoon?
Well, the situation as a whole is that it's become untenable, and ultimately it's a crisis of confidence in the athletic department and Jay Jacobs, and in how do you try to support, if you're a fan or a supporter of this program, this institution, how do you do it if this is a crisis of confidence in his leadership and the direction of the program when there are so many scandals and so many issues going on across the board? For one, this is a football season where obviously we're here in Texas right now. Auburn's set to play Texas A&M on Saturday in the beginning of a very pivotal month in the Gus Malzahn coaching tenure. If things go in the wrong direction, could there be a change in the head coach of the football program for the first time since the end of the 2012 season? Men's basketball mired in the FBI situation with Chuck Person, and now the indefinite, call it suspensions, holding out, whatever way you want to put it, of Austin Wiley and D'Angelo Purifoy. Softball, obviously the ongoing situation there as far as the ongoing investigation, the departure of Clint Myers and Corey Myers, the track federal lawsuit, and the still looming federal lawsuit from Sonny Galloway, former baseball coach. So with all of these things compounding over and over and over again, let alone performance within the program and its various teams, there was a crisis of confidence. So that's why there is ultimately going to be a change made. And why now on a Friday afternoon? It's because it's a Friday afternoon. Quite frankly and quite honestly, Wes, I had received a call last Thursday, as several other people had, that there was going to be a change that, frankly, had already happened. And many of us were ready last Thursday and Friday, but because Auburn had the football open week, many of us were on campus. But I think this was done on a Friday afternoon, frankly, when many of us were in transit to Texas for exactly that reason, because many of us were inconvenienced because we're en route to Texas and would not be able to deal with the story at this time.
Right. Now, obviously, as you're saying, this is something that has kind of been in the works for a little while. You've got to think that Auburn has got a few names on their short list as replacements. I know that you've posted some potential candidates on AL.com. Who are some of those names that Auburn fans should keep an eye on as possibly Auburn's next athletic director?
Sure, we've listed 7 potential names. Personally, I think that there's a group of 4 of them who would probably be at the forefront of that group of 7. I would start by saying David Benedict, the athletic director at Connecticut. He served as the chief operating officer only a couple of years ago at Auburn before he left to go to Connecticut. He's certainly familiar with the program, but is not by any means a lifelong Auburn guy or Auburn man. But is familiar with the program, familiar with things that would need to be changed, need to be done, and issues that would need to be addressed, and obviously a lot of the personnel having just been there only a couple of years ago. Michelle McKenna-Doyle, the CIO of the NFL, an Auburn alumna, who was just on campus last weekend, in fact, photographed with President Leith. It was very convenient that the two of them wanted that photograph out there. She was on campus for an event. As soon as the news broke this afternoon, she suddenly started following on Twitter many of the reporters on the Auburn beat, so read into that what you want to. As an Auburn alumna who, again, no one knows exactly her degree of interest in working in collegiate sports. She hasn't done it previously. She's a very high-ranking official inside the NFL, but because of her connections to Auburn, is certainly a viable candidate as well. Also, Scott Etheridge, who was interviewed previously, a former Auburn kicker, very accomplished in the business world. He would presumably get a call. He got a call 13, 14 years ago when they went through the search with Jacobs. I think he would be considered. And Whit Babcock, who previously served at Auburn many years ago, currently the athletic director at Virginia Tech, viewed as certainly a very accomplished athletic director, but this would be a job that would offer a much larger budget, larger program, bigger and better brand from an athletic director standpoint, but it would come with its own challenges. So I think that those would be the 4 that you're probably going to hear the most about, with the exception of probably Tommy Tuberville is somebody who you will hear the name of many times. That's why we considered him. I think Tommy will probably make it quite well known that he would be interested in the position. I've been told that he probably would be, but whether or not they would go the route of a former coach as opposed to an athletic director or someone with a greater business acumen remains to be seen.
Right. Now, once that decision is made, once they've found Jacobs' successor, what do you think Auburn needs at that position, and what are some of the issues that person's going to basically inherit and going to have to address right off the bat?
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, this is somebody who has to be able to deal with crisis management in the short term. There are these many issues, as we've already discussed, that have to be addressed, and they know they didn't happen under this person's watch, but the cleaning up of them and the dealing with them will go on their watch. Someone who probably has an accomplished record of, if they're an athletic director or currently or previously, someone who's very accomplished in their hiring decision-making process. And in the business world, people who they've hired under them in the business world, as far as going through searches. How do you conduct business? How do you do that when it comes to prominent hires? You may have to make a move for the football coach. Again, as we say, maybe even in a couple of months or maybe longer, but nevertheless, that's a decision an athletic director would have to make. And ultimately, fundraising and reaching out and dealing with this very large fan base, and there are very many different points of view and power brokers, etc. Fundraising is an enormous part of the job, and for people who have currently or previously have served as athletic directors, they know that well, or head coaches for that matter. And people in the business world know all about it. So that's why I'd say that it would have to be crisis management, fundraising, ultimately, and hiring practices would be among the top responsibilities I would say that they would look for in this position. And someone who's innovative, encompassing all of those three characteristics, but someone who's innovative. This is an opportunity for Auburn to not hit the reset button per se, but to kind of break stride with what has kind of been the old Auburn. A lot of people talk about that Auburn always kind of feels the same, and for some folks that's viewed as a positive. But the direction of the leadership of this athletic department was not viewed as a positive as of late, because so many things were the same, and they did start to shift in a negative direction. I think this is an opportunity for this university to make its athletic department a little bit more progressive and innovative with this hire.
Thank you so much for your insight, James. For more on this developing story, you can visit us on AL.com/Auburn.